This is KNX InDepth. I'm Chris Seaton, sitting in today for Mike Simpson.
And I'm Charles Feldman. While the Trump administration and the Saudis seem to be searching for an explanation for what exactly happened to Jamal Khashoggi once inside the Saudi embassy in Istanbul, Turkish investigators are searching for parts of Khashoggi's body in a forest near the city. Now they got us thinking. How would homicide detectives in this country go about making the case that Saudi Arabia was behind what appears to be a cold-blooded murder? We will go in depth. And after decades of well-documented human rights abuses, what is it exactly about the Khashoggi case that has turned opinions against Saudi Arabia? We will look into that, too.
And ever think there was something fishy about the price of canned tuna? It turns out you were onto something. Starkist admitting to fixing prices. And you know what? This sort of thing happens more than you might think. We will go in depth. Also, $1 billion. $1 billion. That is the prize up for grabs in tonight's Mega Millions drawing. Well, you have a far better chance of being hit over the head by a falling swordfish. How many of you will still be playing?
I once got hit in the head by a falling swordfish. No. Okay, we start though with the latest in the Khashoggi case. Joseph Jackalone is a retired NYPD sergeant detective and cold case investigator. He now teaches law and police science at John Jay College. That's in New York City. So let me ask you this. If you were investigating a crime scene of a suspected homicide, and before you got there, you learned that, they painted the walls and cleaned the carpets and did all kinds of other stuff, would that make you suspicious?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, this is, I've been there where they've actually doused the scene with bleach too, which I wouldn't be a bit surprised if they did that here to try to kill any DNA that might be there. But there are effective ways of being able to find forensic evidence under those circumstances, believe it or not.
Yeah. Talk to us a little bit about what you would believe be going on right now behind the scenes as they try and get clues to what exactly happened here.
Well, we know we have video surveillance of outside the place, but I guarantee you there's video surveillance inside the place. So that would be something that I'd look to secure, as well as internet records and cell phone records, right? So emails back and forth to people, text messages. Those are the kind of things that I'd be keying in on to find out exactly who's involved in this, because I don't think they were thinking at the moment that they would be, worried about an investigation down the road. They thought they were going to be pretty slick about this. But as no matter what people plan, there's always mistakes made. And you, as an investigator, have to seize upon those.
One of the things that we found out, the president found out when the Secretary of State returned from his trip to Saudi Arabia, was that the Saudis wanted more time, they said, more time to investigate what they say, actually happened there. I mean, considering that this event, whatever the event was, took place in the confines of one building, how long should it take to do a thorough investigation?
Well, they should have been able to wrap this up a lot sooner than this because, like I said, in fact, it is a consulate and you have all this video surveillance. They know exactly what transpired there. They know exactly who was involved. And the issue that comes down to is that we might never find out the real truth here because of the cover-up that we're watching. I mean, investigators need to get access to that crime scene. And if they're not going to allow that and they were to keep on tampering with evidence, things are going to become more difficult.
We're talking two different countries, two different sets of investigators, possibly. Talk to us a little bit about different countries and how they might have different policies or ways of going about this type of investigation.
Well, one thing, they probably don't have to worry about all the different issues that we have to worry about here, like Fourth Amendment rights and those kind of things. So I think getting some of that evidence would be a lot easier for the Saudi government, especially if they're dumping cell phone records and getting internet records. That I don't see as any issues for them. Here in the United States, we have search warrants and the like that we have to go through. So it is probably a lot easier to get that information, which would then also question the fact why it's taking so long for them to come to a conclusion about what exactly transpired.
So to go back a little bit to what you said about there are always ways to find things. So, and again, we don't know exactly what was going on after this event inside the consulate in Istanbul. But from what little we do know, it appears as if they did some painting, some cleaning up. Who knows what else they did inside. What sort of methods are available to try to still find that, spot of blood or perhaps some DNA or whatever else you would want to find to really find out what happened?
Well, they have a couple of techniques. One of them would be, of course, luminol. There's even another one that it actually, the fluorescent blue. You might have even seen some of that on CSI Miami. There's a lot of truth to that. There's another one called Blue Star that is being used, and they can go back even hundreds of years to find blood. So no matter how well you think you clean something, I always tell my students when they ask the same question, I said, have you ever had a blender explode on you, and then like 6 months later you still find the chocolate milk inside somewhere? It's you really can't get rid of all of that evidence, and that's what. But you need to get access to that scene, and the proper investigators too. So it's just one of those things where if they allow our FBI to go in there and whoever, CIA, whoever is going to be there doing this, I think that they will be able to find that kind of evidence. But
just finally, before we let you go, is it your belief that the FBI from the United States, CIA, or possibly another neutral country might be asked to join in the investigation just to keep it on the up and up?
Well, if the Saudi government was willing to come forward with the actual truth, then they should invite us to come in there and do it, so that we can get our investigators in there and then, basically find what we find and then, take it from there. But I don't think that's going to happen.
All right. Joseph Giacalone, retired NYPD sergeant, detective, and cold case investigator.
When KNX InDepth continues in about 4 minutes, Saudi Arabia, that country has been accused of lots of things over the years. So why has the United States stuck with it all this time? You're listening to KNX InDepth with Chris Sedens. I'm Charles Feldman.
And a reminder that coming up after news and traffic at the bottom of the hour, the prize is tempting, but the odds are long. The do's and don'ts of buying a Mega Millions lottery ticket, $1 billion on the line, especially if you're going into an office pool.
Did you buy in?
To our office pool. Yeah. I actually did just about an hour ago.
Yeah, I did too. Okay, we'll talk about that later. Right now, though, the likely murder of Jamal Khashoggi would be just the latest human rights atrocity linked to Saudi Arabia. Saudi jets bombed a school bus packed with children in Yemen earlier this year, killing dozens. Saudi executioners killed hundreds of dissidents and journalists over the years. And remember, it was mostly Saudi nationals who carried out the 9/11 terrorist attacks. So why have we stuck with Saudi Arabia up until this point? Robert Ford was the U.S. ambassador to Syria and a veteran diplomat. He now teaches at Yale and is a senior fellow at the Middle East Institute. So that is the question, opening question anyway, on the table. We've had lots of evidence over the years that Saudi Arabia has been up to no good all over the world, especially in the Middle East. Why is this particular case getting people so outraged?
Well, I think the reason this case in particular has gained so much attention is that it's a story about a single individual. It's not a group of people. It's one guy who was basically a voice for freedom and freedom of speech, which I think Americans relate to. It goes back to the founding of our country. And there's video to go with it in a kind of a gruesome story. And so I think it's attracted people's attention. But as you say, the human rights record of the Saudi government over the years has not been a good one. Frankly, it's not good in most of the countries in the Middle East.
I've heard some people ask the question that the fact that this man, even though he's a Saudi citizen, he was a U.S. resident, a writer for the Washington Post, a journalist for the Washington Post. If he had been from another country, say from Australia or Japan, pick one, would there be the same outrage?
I think it's a fair question. Of course, the Japanese don't kill journalists. The Australians don't kill journalists, but other governments in the Middle East do. Syria does. The Egyptian government has been blamed for the deaths of many political activists and other governments in the Middle East as well. I think with the case of Jamal Khashoggi, and I knew him personally, I was in panels with him, had dinners with him. He's a lovely man. I think what is particularly striking about his case is he has the Washington Post, which is a powerful element of the Washington foreign policy establishment. The Washington Post is fully engaged on this case in a way that other Middle East activists have not had.
You mentioned in passing that you knew him. I don't know when the last time it was that you saw him or spoke with him, but did he ever express to you any concern, any fears that his views, that his writings would somehow threaten his own life?
Well, I last saw him a month ago. He came to Yale University and spoke to our students. And I talked to him then when he came to campus. And he was absolutely concerned about his physical safety. There was a reason he left Saudi Arabia, and that's why, and had set himself up in the United States. I did not know that he was going to go back to Turkey to go into a Saudi consulate, and I presume that he thought that it would be safe, since he was not on Saudi soil, to go into that building. Unfortunately, more and more, it looks like he was mistaken.
Yeah, I was going to ask you if you were surprised, and I guess you more or less touched on that. I take it you were very surprised that he decided to have this meeting in Istanbul.
Well, he needed a piece of paper that certified that his divorce was official and that he was therefore single and free to marry. He just needed a bureaucratic piece of paper. That's what he went to the consulate for.
Okay, so now let's talk practical politics. You were an ambassador, so you know the way for lack of a better way of putting it, the way the game is played. In the end, no matter what happens, no matter what disclosures the Saudis make or do not make, no matter what we find out or think we find out, is this country's fundamental relationship with the Saudis likely to change?
We and the Saudis share interests. Their oil is important to the world energy price. They, like us, are interested in stability in the Middle East. They, like us, are concerned about Iran. But I have to say that the uproar we're seeing now is not like any I've ever seen between the United States and Saudi Arabia before. This is unprecedented. And I think the Saudi government's hopes that this could be swept under the carpet are misplaced. And there are already reports trickling out of the Middle East. I saw some this afternoon that the ruling family in Saudi Arabia might decide that there need to be changes made. It's important for listeners to remember that the Saudi ruling family removed a king peacefully. They didn't kill him, but they removed him in 1964, for example. So the ruling family can make changes if they think it's in their interest to do so.
All right. Robert Ford, a former U.S. ambassador to Syria and a veteran diplomat. Thank you.
Okay, when KNX InDepth continues in about 4 minutes, we're going to totally change our focus. You probably paid more than you should have for your last can of tuna.
You're listening to KNX InDepth along with Charles Feldman. I'm Chris Sedens.
Well, possible warning for California drivers in the age of legalized pot. New research showing that states where recreational use of marijuana is now legal, there have been spikes in car crashes on highways.
Right now, though, the tuna company Starkist has just pled guilty and faces a possible $100 million fine for colluding with companies to fix the price of a can of tuna. The price fixing apparently went over a course of 3 years, keeping prices artificially high when demand for canned tuna was actually falling. And there are plenty of signs that this type of thing happens with a lot of other food commodities as well. Diana Moss is president of the American Antitrust Institute. Before that, she was a federal regulator. Diana, first of all, Starkist admits to collusion here. How prevalent is this? Who else in the food industry might be doing this?
Yeah, so very good question. This is an important area of enforcement for the U.S. government in upholding our antitrust laws. A lot of times the government will, enter plea agreements with parties to an agreement, an anti-competitive price fixing agreement. It's a way to sort of shake the bushes and get other parties who might have been co-conspirators in the agreement to talk. So these are strategies that law enforcement uses in other areas of the law as well.
How is the average consumer supposed to know? Maybe they won't know whether or not there's price fixing going on. Is it as obvious as you pick up 4 different jars of peanut butter, say, from different companies, and they're all kind of the same price?
Yeah, so that's another good question. We're seeing this problem also play out right now in broiler chickens. So the price of broiler chickens went up about 50% over a period of time where there was an alleged conspiracy to fix prices amongst the chicken producers. So consumers might see higher prices over a period of time. They may go into the grocery store and say, hey, this can of tuna is way more expensive than it was a year ago or 2 years ago. But, fortunately, we have watchdog groups and advocacy groups who focus on food and the consumer, tracking prices. And these are very damaging crimes that really extract harm from consumers, and particularly consumers who might be in income brackets where food is absolutely a high, it takes up a lot of their income, and even pennies on a broiler chicken per pound or a can of tuna can really, really harm consumers. And so this is a real victory for consumers in the Department of Justice bringing this case and getting settlements.
Is there a fine line between what's collusion and what is not? I mean, I guess monitoring this, I wonder how tough that might be, because each individual company, unless they're actually contacting the company down the street that makes the same type of product, they're probably watching closely what kind of pricing the other companies are taking with their products, and then looking at best ways to match that or better it maybe.
Yeah, and there can often be a fine line. So we worry about markets where there are just a few rivals. We see this in beef packing, another food commodity. We see it in chickens. We see it in tuna. So whenever you have just a few rivals, there are often stronger incentives to not compete, to cooperate with your rivals and fix prices than there are to compete hard on price and quality. So the smoking gun evidence that the government often sees in these cases are communications between CEOs agreeing to fix prices, agreeing to divide up markets, where there's evidence, email communications and whatnot. But, we can also use a lot of other techniques and tools to see parallel price increases, for example, where we can sort of track when the agreement was holding and then when the agreement fell apart. There are a lot of tools that law enforcers use to track this kind of behavior. But it's a fundamental question, is it hard-nosed competition where prices are very similar, or is it collusion where prices are similar, if not identical? And so we look to all these factors to determine that.
All right. Diana Moss, she is a former federal regulator, president of the American Antitrust Institute.
So that lottery, right? The one that's today.
Heard something about it.
Yeah, and we have somebody from our own office went out, got tickets for many of us, and we have total confidence in him, total trust.
Pick winners.
Absolutely. Of course, it does involve $1 billion, so... You're listening to KNX InDepth with Chris Eden, sitting in today for Mike Simpson. I'm Charles Feldman.
With $1 billion on the line, how could you not try your luck and spend a few bucks on a Mega Millions lottery ticket today? But while it's fun to dream and dream big, there's a cold, hard reality. You have a roughly 1 in 88 quadrillion chance to pick all of the right numbers and win the $1 billion grand prize.
Well, there are other potential pitfalls in going after a huge lottery jackpot. Beware of the friendly office lottery pool. No doubt many of you listening to this right now chipped in a few bucks with your other office workers to buy some tickets tonight. We did here. We'll get to that later. But how much trust do you have in your fellow workers? What if one person tasked with buying the tickets simply, takes off with the winnings? Jim Murphy is a veteran odds maker and handicapper for sportsbettingexperts.com. So, Jim, we tend to think that if an office worker goes and everyone enters the pool and they win, that this is going to be a great experience, but not necessarily so.
Yeah, if you consider extended legal litigation a great experience, it might be. There's a lot of precedent for office workers and other people, Waffle House employees, I think have been involved twice, of winning a lottery and then just pocketing the money themselves.
Okay, I threw in my couple bucks. I think Charles did the same thing. What could go wrong? What kind of things should we be looking out for? Because honestly, I'm not that concerned right now.
Yeah, well, of course, you got to win the thing first. And as you said, the numbers are astronomical to doing that. The other factor, this is kind of parenthetical to that, is that you've got to win the thing and hope that no one else does, which becomes even less likely when there's 225 million tickets sold. But assuming that you do win, and that is a bit presumptuous, there's a lot of things that can go wrong. Obviously, even though everyone chipped in, obviously someone physically holds the ticket, and they can just take it and pocket the money for themselves, and that has happened in the past. There was another incident I read about where employees at a McDonald's pooled their money, and the woman who was in charge of the tickets went and bought it, and it won, and then she said, "Oh, this is a ticket I bought for myself, not one of the ones I bought for the pool."
So what can people do beforehand to try to head some of that stuff off?
Well, it's kind of funny. Obviously, trusting the people you work with is one thing, but when you start talking about 7 figures, 8 figures, 9 figures, $1 billion, people do strange things. So one thing that I've seen recommended is to kind of do it. I mean, obviously, there's a point of diminishing returns. You probably don't want to get a lawyer involved in advance, but one thing you can do is kind of do it in a more systematic fashion. Pick someone who's in charge of the thing, in charge going to buy tickets, and then have them actually photocopy the tickets or scan them or whatever. And so you physically have what the winning numbers are.
Okay, Jim, why don't you hang in there with us, because we want to bring into our discussion here our very own John Barrett, who is the person from our office who went out and with our money that we all chipped in to get the ticket. John, you always struck me as being a fairly decent fellow, but how do we know we can really trust you if we win $1 billion, John?
Well, it's really funny because I thought you guys wanted my fingerprints before I left the office with the money today.
Oh, we didn't get that. Oh, wait a minute. Come back.
Yeah, I thought we had them.
Yeah, the ankle bracelet's just a fashion statement, I guess.
No, I think there's always a question. It's so funny because we've done these pools before, and I can always see in some people's eyes. But I went out immediately and got the tickets, and I copied the list, I scanned the list, and I scanned the tickets, and immediately texted the tickets to several of the people that are on the list, so that I'm not the only one holding the ticket. They know what the tickets are.
Yeah, Jim.
So you did the right thing.
Yeah, Jim got me thinking that point that you made about but I bought this other ticket for myself.
And I did. Yeah, and I bought a $4 ticket 2 days ago.
Wait a minute. You hold it. Wait, you're already pulling this, huh? So you bought your own ticket. You say you bought your own ticket, huh?
No, I actually did, and the first thing I did was I texted a copy of that ticket to a couple of people in the building before I even went and bought these tickets. So we bought 18, and I scanned those and sent them to you. But, I wonder, what if I won and then the group didn't? You wonder what happens. To me, it probably ends up in court, but that's what happens.
Yeah, it'll end up in court. In some cases, again, a lot of it depends on what the state laws are. There was a case in Alabama where a woman was handed a ticket as a tip from a customer, and she won, but it was a Florida ticket, but she sued them in Alabama. They can't enforce gambling debts or contracts in Alabama since it's illegal. So they said, well, you've got a verbal contract, but we can't do anything about it, so you get to keep all the money.
Sounds like John did everything right.
Wow.
Yeah. One thing you want to do, too, just don't make any offhand comments about, well, if I win, I'm going to buy you a pickup truck, or I'm going to buy you a condo, or season tickets to the Lakers, or whatever, because those come back to bite you. And there's been cases in court where just offhanded comments, they ruled that they're valid verbal contracts.
And John,
you gotta be careful.
Yeah,
John, remember, we do know where you live.
We do. Okay.
I was just, the one thing that gets me, and I've read a lot about this in the past, like people who do it every week. You get the same 8 guys in a factory, and they win after doing it for 2 years. They have a precedent. The same 8 guys. I don't know what, no one's going to argue that they haven't been doing this for a long time. But what about the people who are not at work today when I go around and collect money for the tickets? And that's what I'm always concerned about. And my thing is, it's a matter of timing. I mean, maybe you could have set up. Yeah, but I would expect that somebody would challenge that.
Oh, okay. John, thank you. Jim Murphy, veteran odds maker, handicapper for sportsbettingexperts.com as well.
We'll be keeping an eye on John very closely.
Very close eye.
When KNX InDepth continues, real buzzkill for states with legalized recreational marijuana, a sharp increase in car crashes.
You're listening to KNX InDepth along with Charles Feldman. I'm Chris Sedens.
People opposing the legalization of recreational marijuana use in California warned about this, the likelihood of more stoned drivers on the road, and what it would mean for more car crashes. Well, sure enough, new research that looked at 4 states with legalized pot use found a 6% overall increase in highway crashes, and that continued a trend that actually started about a year ago.
Here in California, it's still too soon after pot was legalized to draw conclusions about the impact on our roads. Plus, DUI stats here are not broken down to substance, so a police report does not differentiate between alcohol or pot use. But should California drivers be concerned? David Harkey at the Insurance Institute for Highway Safety produced the new research on crash rates in states with legalized pot. That question to you, sir. Should California drivers be concerned?
They should be concerned, and thank you for having me on this afternoon. From the studies that we've just released, we're definitely seeing a higher crash risk associated with states that have now passed laws allowing the recreational use of marijuana.
And is it because more people are high when they drive? Is it because of a combination of things? I mean, for example, there has been an uptick in accidents around the country in recent years because of people driving and texting. So is that a lethal combination, getting high and texting and driving?
Yeah, there's no doubt that there are a combination of contributing factors that we're looking at here. One of the things that we tried to carefully control for in this particular study was comparing states with very similar demographics, environmental conditions, weather, employment conditions, economic factors, those sorts of things. So looking carefully where the only change between our study states and our control states was this change in policy. So hopefully we have taken care of some of those other factors like texting, for example, that may be a factor in all of those states, and just focusing on what's happening as a result of this policy change.
But I'm curious because, as you probably heard us say, here in California, they don't break it down so we know the particular substance. And I'm wondering if that's a liability for us because we may never really get to know the true picture.
It is a concern, and there are a lot of states that are that collect data in a very similar way, where the form of impairment, the actual substance, is often not separated out so that you can tell some of these differences. And therefore, it's going to take more than just police-reported crashes. It usually takes working with medical institutions, hospitals, in much more comprehensive studies to assess the effects of different substances in the body, what that means in terms of impairment, and then what that means in terms of road safety.
With the changing landscape we've seen, in the last few years, everything from people using their phones when they're driving, texting while they're driving, now you introduce marijuana to the equation as well. Are we getting to the point where there's going to have to be some serious new ideas drawn up because of the changing landscape?
Well, we certainly think with respect to impairment, there needs to be both, more research on drugs like marijuana, even drugs, prescription drugs. We have a huge crisis in this problem with opioids, and we don't understand the exact relationship of opioids and impairment and driving. All of this is really important to address now. We continue to lose more than 10,000 lives annually in the United States as a result of alcohol impairment on our highways. And so the last thing we want to see is for that toll to be increased by the introduction of another legal substance. So we're very concerned about that, and we want to see states take action to either not legalize marijuana, or if they're going to legalize it, to make sure that they understand they need to begin thinking about the kinds of intervention programs and the kinds of enforcement programs that are going to be needed to combat this problem.
All right. David Harkey of the Insurance Institute for Highway Safety.
When KNX InDepth continues, some of the stories you may have missed, but we did not. You're listening to KNX InDepth with Chris Sedens. I'm Charles Feldman.
Hard to believe, but this may be something that has not yet happened on L.A. roads, but it did happen in Seattle. Motorists driving down one street found themselves under attack by dozens of giant metal balls rolling around, banging into cars. The Seattle Times says that they were apparently really big ball bearings that fell off of a truck.
Astronomers have now found what they think may be the oldest known galaxy, created a mere 2 billion years after the Big Bang created the universe, and that was about 14 billion years ago.
That time of the week, we take a moment to thank the many people who work so hard behind the scenes to help us bring you In Depth. Our producer, Jonathan Service, news editors Debbie Wright and Greg Habel, our production coordinators, hardworking John Nuno and Sergio Alexander, along with Charles Feldman. This is Chris Sedens in today for Mike Simpson. KNX In Depth is back again on Monday at 1 o'clock. CBS News covers the world next.